Welcome back to the program. It's still Daybreak Africa, reaching you from the Lagos studios of KAFTAN Television. As you already know that it's Business Tuesday, where we talk about issues and topics affecting us generally as a people in the world of business and the economy at large. Now, in recent times, we've observed a number of happenings, especially since the ascension or since the inauguration of President Bola Tinubu. He has signed quite a number of bills and signed them into law, and many of these bills have put a change or made a change to our lives as individuals. Now, many of these bills are major determinants of how we will end up living as a people. It affects the cost of living and the standard of living eventually. We're talking about bills that had to do with fuel prices, that has to do with the economy, that even has to do with the appointment of certain officials when it comes to national issues. Joining us this morning to talk about the standard of living of Nigeria now and in the future is Onaopepo Ibrahim. Good morning, Mr. Onaopepo.
Good morning, Rachel.
Yeah, glad to have you on the program this morning.
It's my pleasure.
Well, while I was introducing, okay, thank you. While I was introducing him, I did not mention that he's a development communication analyst, and he will be joining us to talk about this morning. Now, Mr. Onaopepo, we've had a number of bills signed by the president, and I think one of the major ones that determines, that tends to determine how the people of Nigeria will end up living would be the removal of fuel subsidy. I know that quite a number of people would argue that subsidy might not necessarily be the problem of Nigeria at the moment, but the president has decided that it is a major problem and it is a corrupt franchise. However, the removal of fuel subsidy has led to hike in prices of a lot of commodities, and these commodities are things that we use for our daily use and at intervals, or maybe almost every time. So fuel price is that factor that affects every single thing in the economy, and this might have a major role, or might have a role to play in our standard of living as a people. But let me quickly ask you, do you think that any of these bills that has been signed, any of the decisions made by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu so far would have any impact to play on the standard of living of Nigerians?
Well, if I'm to start on any of the policy he has launched since he emerged and take over the presidency of this country, I will tell you there is virtually none of his policy will not affect us. It is either it affects us positively or it affects us negatively. But one thing we should have in mind is this: no government will want to afflict our citizens with negative impediment.
Okay.
When you look into the most obvious of the old policies since he emerged May 29, I think fuel subsidy takes the prime. And the reason why it takes the prime is because almost every one of us, our livelihood is tied towards fuel, whether for domestic use. At the general level, it conveys us from our different workplace back to our house to different places we want to go. And that policy, particularly on fuel subsidy, is not going to be different if we don't have him as the president of this country. When you look at the front lines of the contenders, talk of Atiku, talk of Peter Obi, talk of Kwankwaso, and the likes, they all pronounce it loud and clear that there's going to be a removal of fuel subsidy the moment they emerge. But the timing might be different. So another thing is this: we cannot at the same time deny whether or not we are receiving effect from the fuel subsidy in terms of hike in prices. when it comes to cost of living, transportation, what we buy, commodity we buy in the market, it has affected all of this drastically. So whether we like it or not, it is going to affect.
Okay.
Okay. Now, so do you think that because we've had issues, even people that have been supporting the fact that the fuel subsidy was removed, whereby we also have people that kicked against it. Now, as an analyst, do you think that that was the right decision to make by the president, and was that the right time for him to do it? Was that do you think that there should have been something he should have done other than just making that pronouncement?
I see the pronouncement as a genuine pronouncement, because it would have been more detrimental if he delayed the pronouncement, because it is better he let us know what is in play. Because what was handed over to him pronounced it that at a particular point in time in this year, that is June 30th, the subsidy will lapse. Okay. So for him to have that boldness to pronounce it that day, I want to give kudos to him though. That is my own perspective on that.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, let me allow you finish, please. Go ahead.
And I've listened to many people talking about what are those things what are the provisions to be made for the subsidy removal not to hit the citizens of this country. I have listened many times and virtually none has been able to hit on the nail. Because if you tell me the government is not working on how to make life easy for people, I will tell you it is a lie. We have projects that are long time in form, and we have programs that are for short time, immediate benefit. So probably from the side of the government, what they've been doing has been what Nigeria stand to benefit at the longer time. So I think I wouldn't say the government has not been doing anything, because the interest of any good leader is to make sure that life is meaningful to all the citizens.
Okay.
So from my own hand, okay.
Okay, I was going to say that I don't want us to dwell too much on fuel subsidy, because there are a lot of other aspects when it comes to the standard of living in Nigeria. Now, according to the United Nations, over 70% of Nigerians, over 80% of Nigerians are living below the standard of living. They are living below the normal. They're not spending as much as they should. I think it says they're spending less than $2 a day, if I'm not mistaken. And we can see that we still have a lot of rural areas in Nigeria, for example. Now, I know that I don't want us to look at it just from the urban perspective, or the part that affects people in Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja, Kano, and the rest of them. But what about those in the rural areas? Many of these decisions tend to affect them. Now, I'll make an example of a certain commodity that has become gold recently, which is tomatoes. We know that these tomatoes comes from the north, from northern Nigeria, and it comes at a particular price. Now, recently, you get like maybe 4 pieces or 3 pieces of tomatoes for 200 naira. That's 3 tomato fruits for 2 vegetables rather for 200 naira. And a lot of people are beginning to take a step back from tomatoes. Many people are settling for canned tomato products. Some are even trying not to even eat tomatoes at all. I remember a friend was telling me that she used carrots instead of tomatoes to make her jollof rice. So, and although carrots might be healthy, but let's think about those people who cannot afford to substitute tomato for carrots. People who will buy substandard products. People who will go to the market to buy rotten tomatoes, which they call esha in Yoruba language. Don't you think that these factors in its own self tend to affect the standard of living? Because look at the health sector. There is brain drain. And a lot of people are being rushed to the hospitals. Who knows? Maybe these things are some of the things that that's even affecting the people that's causing a lot of people to fall ill, and then they go to the health sector, then there is no doctor. All the doctor or many of the doctors have traveled out of the country. So I want us to dwell on this standard of living on itself. Now, do you think that aside the fuel subsidy or any other thing that maybe affects people in the urban areas, how exactly does this affect people in the rural areas of Nigeria?
It affects the people in the rural area in multiple facets, because everybody who stays in the urban area depends more on those in the rural area for their survival when it comes to food.
Right.
And that is the reason why we are now receiving it in the urban area like we are receiving it today. My own angle towards looking at this matter will be different from the way many people have been saying it, because it is not all about talking about the detriment felt. It is talking about what are the possible solutions to some of this problem. And to me, when you see a concentration of government at the federal and at the state level, who is thinking for the local level that is closer to people in the rural area? As we speak today in Nigeria, I will tell you the monopoly for the private local government is still hanging. And I want to let you know the hardship we are facing in this country began from that. The moment you stripe the local government their power, I'm telling you, when money is coming from the federal level, it gets to the state, and nothing is coming to the local government.
Nothing.
If there are decisions to be made at the local level that is closer to the rural environment, who makes that decision if not the local government? The local government now cannot on its own appoint somebody or give anybody's job. Let's take it for instance, like this subsidy removal. If the autonomy is returned back to local government, we have 774 local governments in Nigeria. If each local government decided to employ 50 persons, do you know how many people will be removed out of poverty? We have different, our soils are peculiar to different crops. Like in Ogun State, we have some areas that they are best in producing cassava. We have areas that are best in producing yam. We have areas that are best in producing rice. We have areas that the soil is good for palm oil. And when you now look at the positioning of power now, we have local government like it is not working. So who can felt the pain of those people? Nobody. Because before their yearning could get to the state level or get to the federal government level, when they don't have anybody to front for them, it will be very, very difficult. And I'm telling you, it will go to a time in this country that we depend on China, the usual way to bring us tomato. There was a time that they were packaging something in form of flour mixed together with coloring, and I think the NAFDAC did Nigeria more favor by stopping that production. And that led to a sudden Nigerian tomato paste company in the north. I don't think the company is working very perfectly well due to the insurgency in that area. So things like this, the very best way to counter this problem is to let's have power back at the local government. The local government can now be the one to think for him or herself. Go back to the United Nations, this thing into year 2000, that brings about all the whole world that gave birth to the, the National Development Goal. I mean, what do we call it?
Sustainable Development Goals.
We now have Sustainable Development Goal. We have the very first one is MDG. I think MDG.
Okay.
So what led to that was, when we look at the Marshall Plan that was used to salvage the European countries after the World War, then it works for them like magic. But look at us here. What is making it not to work for us in this country? It is because there are a lot of theories that work for them in developed countries. We want to domicile same thing into our own country. Let us be the one to think for ourselves. And to think for ourselves should be from the local level, the rural environment. So the moment we all depend, now how many people are there in the rural environment? Everybody wants to live a luxurious life. No amenities in these areas, and you want me to stay in that area.
There.
Even if I have a younger brother, I will go and pick that person because I don't want them to die in abject poverty.
Right.
Let's be frank with ourselves.
Right.
So with power not domicile at the local government, I'm telling you, we have just started. Though I don't wish for something negative, but we must do certain things at the right time, most especially during this subsidy removal. Let's give the autonomy back to local government. And I will say it, there is no way you can be perfect in life. One of the drastic decisions taken by the President Olusegun Obasanjo era was taking power out of local government. So it might have its own reason. It might have its own reason, but be that as it may, I think the very best way to come to the aid of Nigeria is let power. You say no money, no money. When money stops at state level, how do you justify it? In 2014 to be precise, I could recall that the subsidy, the excess crude oil that gets into a local government in Ijebu was over 157 million naira. And in the implication was the state government said, oh, you cannot have it. We will be the one to do everything you want to do in your local government. How does the local government know that it is road that is the peculiar things for the people in that local government and not something else? So it will continue to be like that. So I think the very best for now, there are still a lot of things because looking at it from a development communication perspective, there are more that we can do to bring people in the grassroots to see reason to support certain policies of the government.
All right. Before you continue, there are so many questions, and our time is really running fast. You know, we just talked about those in the rural areas and all of that. And Rachael also mentioned something about an average Nigerian doesn't spend up to $2 per day. And recently, so many people have, of course, been complaining about the cost of living. Because definitely we talked about fuel subsidy and rising cost of food and all of that. What do you think, as an analyst, what do you think is the current state of the economy right now, the current standard of living of the people of Nigeria right now? Because definitely we've always been having the rate of the rates at which people live, and I'm sure that probably by now it would have also decreased. So what do you think is the analysis right now?
The steady decline of Nigerian naira to dollar will continue to same up the pressure. The moment we cannot make anything happen to Nigerian naira to have a steady growth or not to backslide, even though if Nigerian government increase our salary, our wages to a particular tones of millions, it will not make a difference. And there was a time I was accusing certain personalities about not having their, what is it called, industries in Nigeria, and decided to take it abroad. And I had an encounter with one old man, and he was trying to let me see the reason that part is from the government and majority of it is from Nigerians themselves. We Nigerians don't believe in what we can do. We don't believe in what is made in Nigeria. There's virtually nothing that is being produced in this country that holds value for us. If we continue to have a taste of the foreign, I will tell you we'll continue to be a dependent state. And the detriment is not to Nigerians alone, because it is to the detriment of the whole of African continent. If Nigeria can break that chain today, the whole of African continent will develop. I can assure you that. But we that should be at the playing role will now be the one to depend on whatever that is coming from wherever, from the part of the world.
Okay,
we cannot produce. So production, so what I'm trying to say is, the moment we are not producing anything, it will still continue to be the same music.
All right, thank you very much. Now, finally, before we leave the show, the topic has to do with the future of the standard of living of Nigerians. Now, based on the policies that both the PDP-led government, the APC-led government, and the incumbent has made so far, and the economical decisions that the former CBN governors or the ministers of finance and all the other cabinet members that they have made, do you see the standard of living of Nigerians going beyond, maybe, let's say, increasing by 100% in the next 5 years?
100%. That is, nothing is impossible. I don't want to be pessimistic outrightly. But one thing is this: if the government did not put into consideration the people of Nigerians in its policy, it will continue to be a fail, regardless of what the substance in the policy. So what I'm trying to say here is this: the government should try and carry everybody along and let it be everybody's policy, not just the government policy. So when you look at policy, though the time is just very short, I would have go a little bit into the the embattled Emefiele issues on that work for an average Nigerian. You are selling dollar to certain people at a particular amount of money and a rate, and it is easy for me to just look for a means and get this dollar and go and sell it. With $1,000, I can make 300,000 naira profit. Just leaving the bank and go to one aboki, and you think it will work for everybody. It will not work. Another thing is, I'm a Muslim. We have tied religions to almost everything in this country, and going that way, if we want to do anything in this country, we are not doing it objectively. We are saying religion, it will not work again. So I think government should try and let people who will be the beneficiary of whatever policy to be a key player in the policy making. So how did they make that happen is this: there should be education along with information and sensitization. You continue to educate. There is always nothing that is going on in this country that an average Nigerian seems to be interested in. The moment you are not interested in this country, a little thing can just divert your attention to think Japa is the next line of action. And I have looked into many people that have Japa. I cannot imagine somebody who is a general manager of a particular organization leaving the shore of this country, and at the end of the day will go and be a guard to one house. So you don't get it. The value you hold as a general manager does not commensurate with whatever you want to go and do in the developed countries. I don't see.
Well, that's another topic for another day. I hope one day you'll be able to join us in person, because you've raised a lot of issues, especially in these episodes about local government areas, decentralization of power at the federal level to local government areas. You've talked about Japa syndrome. You've talked about a lot of things that I really would like you to come back on the show to join us to talk about. But hopefully you'll be able to do that in person sometime soon. Thank you so much,
okay,
Mr.
I will be glad.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Onaopepo Ibrahim, for joining us on the program this morning. All right, viewers, that's how far we can go on this segment of Daybreak Africa. We'll go on a quick break now. When we return, the program continues. Do stay with us.